Hey everybody, I'm Angie Goff, and this is the Oh My Goff Show. For nearly 2 decades, I've covered big stories and big names, whether it was reporting from the royal wedding, the Super Bowl, or sitting down with the First Lady. There's one thing I know for sure. Behind every headline is a human story, one filled with ups, downs, laughter, and life lessons. Each episode will tap into some pretty incredible minds, people who've found true success in chasing their dream or changing the world. It's the story behind the story that I hope will inspire your own. This is the Oh My Goff Show with Angie Goff. You've been very busy because you dropped your second book.
Yes.
Right? So Here and Hereafter, How Wisdom from the Departed Can Transform Your Life Now.
It's really focused on the question of if the departed could do their lives over again, what would they do differently? So many people that sit with me in that chair are seeing me because something went unsaid or undone. And even under the best of circumstances, even under the best, most expected deaths, you still deal with people feeling, I wish I would have done more.
Do you ever just walk into a space, or even if you're doing a Zoom with somebody and an impression or reading comes to you? Or
Absolutely.
So you feel anything now?
I would love, you both genuinely have such good energy. If you want to get in touch afterwards, we could do a Zoom reading or something.
Oh my God.
As we go through this, I have no control over who's going to pop in. Is on your mother's side of family, there's very much kind of an acknowledgement around when people passed, a lot of their stories and some of their secrets kind of also passed away with them.
I've asked her about her past a lot, and she just won't open up.
It looks like somebody either lost a baby, lost a child. There's an emphasis on like a story around that. I want us to look into this about either somebody rescuing somebody from a boat, or I'm on a boat and I'm making a rescue. I don't know what that is, but it just comes through as significant.
I asked my father afterwards, I was like, was there something with a rescue? And he did confirm that my mother had a near drowning. That was very traumatic.
That's crazy.
And then I thought back, I was like, that's right. She never would go to the pool. She never wanted to be on a boat. She never wanted to be in water. And then he talked about a loss of a baby. And he was like, yeah, your mother lost a couple siblings during the Korean War. She was the only one that survived. So it was just all of a sudden my story started to come together.
Back to Jamie. Because I keep going back and forth. So bear with me here, the way this comes across. I got couple things coming in there. Gotta talk about mom. This feeling of basically knowing that I had to go, and there's this feeling of basically, in the way this comes across, knowing that I had on some level permission to go or was allowed to pass away. That sometimes is the greatest act of compassion we can give to those who've passed, who are passing. And I feel like in some capacity there's an acknowledgement of a lot of appreciation. Sometimes that's what people need to hear, sometimes from their own children, to be able to kind of let go.
Of all the readings I've had, nobody's ever brought up that my mother, before she passed, had said she was ready and asked if we were ready, for her transition. A very personal thing. It's obviously not something my family brings up in regular conversation. We talk about my mother and stuff like that, but never those, moments near the end where it was really difficult.
I want you to know that when they come through, there's so much more than how they passed. In life, I find that we really are so much more than what happens to us. And that gives me a lot of comfort in knowing that whatever happens when we go, we at least continue, and that love still exists and there's still a bond there.
Jamie has had readings before. I have never had them, and I guess you would consider myself somewhat of a skeptic in some ways, just because I'm like, how is this even possible? And I know how TV works and things are produced up and this and that. And so really to understand it and to feel it, I think you have to honestly have an experience like that for it to feel real.
He might get messages from people on the other sides or feelings and stuff, but it's not necessarily always just a message from someone who's passed. It's like also could be a message for people who are living. The readings were also very different in the fact that some of the things that came through were about people who are still living and with us, and messages that they need to hear.
He likened it to a racehorse. And it really was like that, because he'd start talking and then he's telling me something and then he's like, oh, wait. And then he gets, and then he's like, oh, this is for you, Jamie. And then it would come.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
I was like, my head was on a swivel. Right out the gate, he all of a sudden asked me about a certain family member in my family. And yeah, I guess you could Google me and find out certain things. But then he alluded to things that nobody would know, because believe it or not, I think a lot of people in the public eye, we keep a lot of stuff private as well. You know, a lot of the stuff that we do put out there is really what we feel comfortable with, but there is a certain amount that we keep private. And so that kind of freaked me out right at the beginning. And then he talked about how really he was just getting one side of my family coming through more than the other, which made total sense, because I feel like I was very much closer, even though I grew up, spent most of my time in Korea as a child. I felt like I was always closer to my dad's side of the family. There were things like that that came through that were startling. And then there were things like the Beatlemania and stuff that I couldn't place. He can bring things in from in-laws, Margaret, but it did turn out. And
Did you find Margaret?
Well, apparently, because he said it was not biological. He was like, this is coming from another side, because that can happen. And he's like, are you married? And I was like, yeah. And so I asked his father, and I guess he had an Aunt Margaret of some sort. But I haven't done enough research to really dig into that.
Right.
But like you said, I'm just trying to figure it out.
And Tyler says that it could be a year down the road where suddenly something clicks. You know, like you said, we had the opportunity to record it so we could watch it back. So
yeah,
I played it for my sisters and my dad. And when I played it for them, they were able to make connections that I necessarily couldn't make, or just like kind of validate that what I thought was true was true.
He started off by talking to me, but then all of a sudden, Jamie's people were like, yo. They boxed him out. And all of a sudden, he's like, I've got 3 people here who are under the age of 78 that literally are all trying to come in at the same time. It was really, really strong. And he does talk about that. You know, sometimes he'll feel things, but he won't tell it unless the person is like really ready to receive it.
Forward,
And so I think you were like, I'm an open book, like I'm ready to receive. And he delivered. So what was the most striking thing that came through for you that you haven't heard before from other?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple things I had mentioned to you, Angie, before we had the reading, that I really wanted to know that my mom was with her brothers. My mom is one of 3, and unfortunately they have all passed. And I said the one thing I wanted to know is to make sure they were all together. I was pretty sure they already were, because I get a lot of signs from my mom. And so does my family. And the first thing he said was that a mother-like figure came forward with 2 men, and they felt like siblings to her, or cousins who had the same, like a close enough feel that they would have been like siblings. And he said they were 2 men. So I instantly knew it was my mother and both of her brothers. He knew age range. He knew what she died of. Probably the second thing out of his mouth for me was that there was, cancer in the family. My mother died of cancer. My uncle died of cancer. My grandmother died of cancer. And he brought up genetics and getting tested, and something with the ovaries. And my mother had ovarian cancer. And I mean, that was right off the bat, some of the stuff.
Yeah, he talked about something starting here and just coming up. Yeah. And he talked about it was during a very transitional time, right?
Right. So my mother passed away when I was 22, and I was in grad school for journalism, and I was only a couple months in, and we knew she was going downhill. And I went to one of my professors, and I said, I think that I have to drop out of school. And he said, well, why don't you talk to your family first, and I'll see what we can do on this end of things. And I remember calling my dad, and my dad saying, you're going to have to tell your mother that. I'm not going to tell her for you. So I drove home, and she had said to me, word for word, she said, I don't want you to give up your life for mine. And I had said to her, well, she had kind of stopped her life when her mother was sick. She took a leave of absence from work to stay with my grandmother. And she said, I still don't want that to happen. And so when Tyler did this reading, he made the comment that he's getting the sense that timing couldn't have been worse. That was what she was saying. And, I was 22 and my sisters were in their 20s. They had been recently married, so we were all in a point of our lives where kind of like our adulthood had just kind of started. And it's kind of like the time when you start to become best friends with your mom.
I saw you go for the tissues, and I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, he just, because he wouldn't have known what you wanted to hear, right. And that was very specific.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, when you watch TV, every reading he does is at least an hour, but they obviously edit it down to just like the few minutes that you see per case or per person. And I will tell you, I didn't feel rushed. This guy has 300,000 people on a wait list that want to get in for readings with him. That is why he has this show. And because it's after the success of Hollywood Medium. But we didn't feel rushed. He couldn't have been nicer. He basically just told us what he knew. And at the end, he's like, do you have any questions for anybody? Of course, I was like, I don't know what just happened, because I'm like, what is going on? And I have so many questions, but I can't get my thoughts in order. But then you talked about having messages for other family members that have
Right.
not had readings.
Right. But he basically said, you know, there is a situation that's happening right now, in which, you know, your dad doesn't, I don't want to say he didn't say he doesn't feel like he could say no, but he basically said your dad's trying to help someone and it's okay to say no.
And he was
Right.
pretty specific about it. He was like, there's this,
Right.
like a situation, and it's very timely. That's what
Yes.
he said. He was like,
Yes.
and when you told me afterwards, like what
it was,
it
right?
was, I was like, that's really timely.
I told him I would stand behind whatever decision he decides to make. But it was something, it was funny because my sisters and I hadn't talked about it together yet when Tyler said that. None of us knew that he spoke to the other sisters about this situation. So this was just a conversation between me and my dad that I knew about. And so when we all watched the reading, both of them were like, no, we're not, like, and so in that moment, we all realized we all knew, you know, so it was
That's
wild that he said it
hilarious.
like that, because I knew exactly what he was talking about when he said it.
Oh my goodness. Well, and then we talk about the living and the messages that come in for the living. And so I had more of that. He brought up my husband and also said, oh yeah, just, keep in mind, like, chronic, what did he say? We started laughing,
Stomach
but
issues, I
no,
think.
chronic acid reflux.
Yes, and
He's
you
like,
had been like, he pops Tums.
I was like, he eats Tums like candy. I mean, there's a thing of them by the bed, and it's really the only thing he does outside of his regular routine. And maybe a lot of people do that, but
But it's probably not okay.
but it's probably not okay.
Yeah.
And my husband, people will meet him and they'll say, like, this guy is the nicest human ever. He's just always happy to do whatever. Like, you never see him in a bad mood. We never fight. People don't believe me, but we really don't. Unless I've been drinking, but that's another thing. That doesn't count. That doesn't really count. But he said that just be careful because all of his stress and everything is in manifest in the stomach, because I do never see anything. I don't know when things are bothering him and stuff. And then and so my husband, who's pretty much kind of a skeptic too, it's the same thing. I'm kind of like, I gotta play the tape, and hopefully be able to just be aware of it. But that's his whole thing, is like, most of the stuff that I share with you is not to scare you, but to be so it could be preventative,
Right.
so that you're on top of it. And I think that was one of the things that I took away from it when he went down the line with each person, and some of it, I don't think he would have been able to find on social media or scraping
Right.
the internet, because I know that's the next thing people want to know is
Right.
like, oh, I'm sure they do their research, but
Yeah. I mean, he had specific names too.
oh yeah, and then he brings up freaking
Yeah,
cat. Yeah,
we were almost at the end of the reading. I think he was actually getting something for you.
Yeah.
And then he was like, do either of you know a Catherine? And I laughed out loud because that's my grandmother's name, and he brought up the Catholic Church. He specifically said Saint Mary and Saint Joseph, and my grandmother had statues of both in her backyard.
And I do recall you saying, well, yeah, I would love to know what Catherine has to say.
I know.
And he goes, well, he's like, it's really kind of like a cameo. She just popped in and is like, woohoo, and then walks out. But he spoke specifically about my sister Jenny, and he was like, it doesn't necessarily have to be you, but someone needs to check in on her.
Right.
I'm sorry, Jenny, if I'm airing your laundry. Jenny, you okay? You okay? Show me a sign. No, I'm kidding. But I don't want to make light of it or anything, but just how specific he was incredible. It really was. And I think the biggest thing I took away was just the fact it's never sat well with me about my mom, and the fact that one day when our parents are gone, those stories go with them. There's only so much that you're going to get on ancestry.com, right? And here I am trying to teach my children about where they came from, and we have two cultures and that type of thing, and it just made me realize just how much I don't know, and how much I'd given up on trying to find out.
Right.
And I think what was really comforting for me was that he said over time that my mom will he believes that she's going to soften up and things will open up, because I don't know if just from being more open to having those messages come in.
But he also brought up like emotions that I don't know that anybody else would know that we were feeling during specific times. So like for me, he says, I'm seeing something about geography. Like you guys are separated. He knew that I was of three sisters, and he said that you all grieved on your own. He's like, not that you don't talk to each other. And anybody who personally knows me knows that I'm very close with my family. A lot of people make comments about how close I am with my sisters and the unit that we are. But, the truth was, we weren't all living in the same household when my mom passed. We were all very much starting our own lives, like I mentioned earlier. And grieving was really lonely. Yeah. And he said that. And it was like, it's funny because even within my family, we haven't acknowledged it, but it's not because we didn't grieve together ever. It was because that was just what it was. And he kept saying, it is what it is. And it was funny because I didn't think about it till today, but when my mother was sick at the end, my dad had said, the doctors didn't promise us a cure. They said, we'll give her the best quality of life for the longest time we can. It is what it is. And it's kind of been like how we handled like when she was sick. It's like, we're not going to act like this is abnormal. Like this is just another part of our lives. Like we're not going to, it is what it is. The diagnosis is what it is. And we're just going to keep living. And that kind of struck a chord with me today. It's like when you get these readings, they acknowledge things that you might not have even acknowledged yourself. Yeah. Around these situations that he talks about.
And there's comfort and peace that comes with that.
Right.
A lot, right?
Right, when it's said out loud.
That I have a couple of people standing by.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Great to see you.
Ew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I know that you had an experience with a medium.
I did. I'll get right into it. My experience is a little different than yours. I didn't have the luxury of having Tyler Henry, which is a dream of mine. But I had a friend that tragically lost a nephew, and I had reached out to him, and he had told me that he had met this medium and had encouraged me to speak to her because I had lost a brother back in 2019. I reached out to the woman. I basically just gave her my name and told her where I got, her number from, and she scheduled the following appointment with me. I didn't give her my last name. She knew nothing about me. Then as time went on and we started talking, it was very clear that my brother was coming through. He was a soldier. He served, did 3 tours over in the Middle East. He was a Green Beret. He was a really decorated soldier. And, he, struggled with some demons that we didn't even know. And I guess that's just kind of, unfortunately, what kind of comes with the territory when you serve in the military and you're in war. She's like, what 6 months from now is happening that's significant? And so she kind of started counting the months, and she's like, oh, that's September. In September, he wants you to let go of a red balloon. And I was like, oh my God, his birthday's in September. She made references to that, he misses his nieces and wants me to pass that message on. I have 2 daughters, so that kind of hit me too. The one thing that I was not expecting after the reading was what a weight off my shoulders it was, and how I feel like I can move on, like there's not these things that are just weighing me down every day. So if there's one, like the biggest thing that I got out of it was that, like, I just feel lighter, and I feel like he's happy and he's in a good place.
Erin, thank you so much for opening up and sharing that story. I know how personal it was to you. And I think that at the end, you echoed what a lot of people say after they go through this process, is that heaviness, that weight is lifted.
And my mom has been gone for 10 years. And, every reading I have, I feel like like lighter, I think is the term, that I'm looking for.
Bruce, you can go ahead and unmute your mic if you want.
I have not personally had an experience with a medium. I'm more of an extra large, but I prepare these jokes ahead of time. I'm kidding. I think that in terms of the commentary and latching on to what Erin said earlier, certainly there are people who are skeptics. They claim that it's cold reading or hot reading or Jedi mind tricks or something of the sort. And being an IT, I'm a man of science. But is there really a necessity to explain it? I would love to hear Tyler's insights into where he thinks the source of that ability comes from. But, for you and I and everyone else, and Erin, exactly what you said before, the ends justify the means. People are healing. People are finding closure. People are unraveling mysteries. And personally, I don't care how they get there. And that in and of itself is an unquestionable ability.
But we thanked Bruce for the comment and a very valid question, and also for the mini comedy hour that he gave us just now. So thank you so much for that. But it is a very valid question. This is one that we actually talked with Tyler about. And really, it's like trying to explain calculus to a 3-year-old,
right?
Essentially, it's inexplicable. He found out at the age of 10. He always knew he was a little off and weird, not weird, but in his words, like just things were different. But he had this premonition that his grandmother had passed, and that is the story. And when he got it, they get the phone call that she had just passed, and it was just maybe there's something to this, right? And so for him, that. I think it's even hard for him to explain.
Goes back to the idea that we are all kind of like energy. And while like your physical body isn't here, the energy is still here. So it's like, when you feel something that's like, okay, this is too good to be a coincidence.
Yeah.
I think it's that on another level. Like he's able to pinpoint that. Whereas, other people like say you or I were like, okay, that was a little too weird for that to happen. He sees those like coincidences almost like a little more crystal clear than we do.
Hi, April. What's going on?
So, I'm sorry, but I've met Tyler in person. He was actually here at the National Harbor 2 years ago. So I did see him live. It was so real to see him just have random people just raising their hands. And he's just like, okay, I feel this type of energy in this person. I can't name names, of course, because it's a little challenging, as you ladies are saying. But here's my thing. How do you know that you're a medium? And to piggyback to what you ladies were just saying, that he had like these feelings, right? And I feel like sometimes I have that feeling with the energy when someone passes. It feels like it sticks with you. But definitely, I feel those spirits sometimes like, hey, if someone passed away, my husband's friend passed away, and I felt like he was just following me because he wanted some closure.
Thank you, April. Thank you for sharing that. I would say, honestly, I think you need to go see a medium.
Yeah.
I do. I feel like you need to go and maybe talk to someone and talk this out and see what comes through and see if these things are all validated. I don't doubt that there are other people that are out there that have the gift and they're suppressing it. Oh, that can't be true. You're crazy. That's not. I mean, he was ostracized for how he was as a child and growing up, just because he couldn't help what was happening, and he recognized that. And that's why he started the scribbles, which, by the way, he sent us the scribbles.
Nice.
Pretty cool, right? I know.
Nice.
Pretty darn amazing. And I know that you're going to frame yours.
I have never taken a job without a sign from my mother. And I mean, and it's a blatantly obvious sign. I was going through a very difficult time a couple years ago, and the radio in my car would just start turning off. Like I could watch the dial go down, and I wouldn't be doing anything. I would just be.
You sure the battery wasn't dying?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've never changed the battery in my car. My car is still kicking, But it was like weird stuff like that.
Well, here's Jenny. We'll bring Jenny on. What's up, sis?
Oh, wow. I'm on here. Okay. Hey, so I just had to, step out for a second. I was watching intently, but I did not know what you guys were talking about because I was in a meeting. I am dying to know what Tyler Henry said about me, because you told me that he mentioned me. So you need to share. Spill the beans, sis.
I don't think you want me to mention it in a public forum. I'm just going to say that it wasn't bad. But Jenny, I will definitely let you know what he said afterwards, because I did go back and listen to the tape. But
Man, now I'm like so nervous
Don't
because
be
you don't want
nervous.
anything back.
Don't be nervous, but I think it also speaks to the fact that these things are very personal, to the point where, look, he's telling me something like that I don't even want, I can't share. I want to share because I want to be able to say, look, this was cool. It came through.
Right, but it's personal.
But
and you should be allowed to have your own personal life.
Yeah. So,
it's the Oh My Goff show, because last year you held nothing back.
Well, I know, but when it comes to my family, though, and it comes to that type of stuff, I am very guarded, very extremely guarded.
I agree.
So,
But I do want to say to you, I'm really, really, really happy that you got that reading, because from a non-skeptic over here that is highly intuitive and spiritual on this side, I mean, I got my crystals over here, and I got all the things over here. It is definitely something that I'm so happy you experienced.
Yeah. It's like the first podcast in 3 years that you've actually wanted to watch. So
yeah, it is.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, I'm in. But
thank you for that, and yeah, we'll definitely connect afterwards. Now that I'm putting the piece together, because it was a lot to take in, and I'll let you know exactly what he said. You were the baby in the family. You were the Jenny, and he talked about how I keep seeing this star, like you're the star, like the one that and you're like, oh my gosh, like
I laughed pretty hard, but I didn't tell my sisters that part.
I
let them watch it naturally, and both of them were like, "Of course she is." I mean, we're publicly acknowledging. My family knows that I am the star, so we're good.
Let us know if you have more questions about mediums, or you have a recommendation, because we talked about even going to somebody else here locally and wanting to talk and ask more questions. Now that I know what I'm doing and I'm not a rookie anymore, I'm bringing my notebook. I got my Kleenex. I am ready to go. Maybe grab baby Jesus. Give me some baby Jesus over here. We got baby Jesus
Dolly's got
here.
baby Jesus over here.
And we love that you're joining us here on Fireside. Don't forget, we are going to be back here live again next Wednesday. I will have that show ready to go. We might get into some witchcraft.
Oh man.
We'll see. I know it's going from mediums to witchcraft.
Yeah.
Where are we going with this? Definitely out of this world.
Down a rabbit hole.
Down a rabbit hole. But boy, is it fun. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a great day. And if you're here in the DMV area, try to stay cool. It's really hot out there. And Jamie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to my mom's show. Don't forget to subscribe.